Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Jason White. This is Jason's Weird Reads, and as the title suggests, this is where I like to talk about horror books, some fantasy books, and some science fiction books, though 2021 is looking like it's going to be the year of fantasy, which I'm excited about. Hope you are as well. But I've been seeing a lot of people doing this video here, and I thought, because I have a challenge, I want to get rid of my giant TBR pile. And in order to do that, I have to actually read them. So I have a list of 21 books here from my TBR that I'm planning on reading. This is going to be a year-long thing. And also, as a disclaimer, not all these books, there's 21 books here, but some of them represents a series that I'm hoping to finish by the end of 2021 or catch up on. And also, another disclaimer is that this is always subject to change because my moods change, and if I'm not in the mood to read something, I'm likely not going to read it. So these books I all want to read right now. So I have all my books stacked up here into 4 groups: horror, science fiction, and fantasy. I have a couple books in contemporary and a few books in mystery thriller. So those are the 4 categories that we're talking about here. I'm going to start with the horror because that's pretty much what I always read. And at the top of the list here, I have Gemma Amor's Cruel Works of Nature. I bought this last year after reading her book Dear Laura, and this is a collection of her short stories. I'm really looking forward to seeing what she can do with an even shorter form, because Dear Laura is pretty short. But I really fell in love with her writing style and how grim how grim her work is. And I love the cover art for that. That's just beautiful. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Book number 2 here, I was sent this as a free copy for my review, and I haven't been able to get to it yet, but I've been wanting to read it because it just sounds like something that I want to read. And of course, it's When the Sky Goes Dark by Oliver C. Seneca, and I'm hoping 2021, hopefully early on, I'll get to this book and I will let you guys know what I think about it. It's very well, it looks really good on the inside. I like how it's spread out. And I also got this card I'm going to be using as a bookmark, because I'm terrible at losing my bookmarks. I was going to read this next book in January, but January's looking pretty full, so I'm moving it to February. I think that'll still be a good month to read this, and that's Taktumi. Now this book is really interesting because it is a collection, another collection of short stories. Actually, this is an anthology because it's all different authors. But it's an anthology written all by Inuit writers. And they write, the premise of the anthology is horror stories set in the Arctic. And it mixes a lot of different Inuit, I guess, stories and customs and culture into this, and so I've been looking forward to that. But I wanted to wait until winter to read it because, well, Arctic stories, right? Arctic horror stories. So I am really excited to dig into this one. Cameron Rubik, I read 2 of his books about a year and a half ago, and then I didn't read any more. So I'm planning on fixing that by in the springtime reading Gulf Curse. I also want to read his 3rd book of the Kill River series, and I still have yet to read his Disco book. I can't remember the exact title of it right now, but I'm thinking maybe of reading that one maybe in the winter of next year, as for like a holiday read, because it's placed on New Year's Eve. I could technically start it now, but my reading is really booked right now. So I want to finish off, if I can, Cameron Rubik's books, but this is where I'm going to start with Gulf Curse. I bought this book, and then I lost it. I don't know how that happened. But then it reappeared again. So this book, I need to read it before it disappears again. And that is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I bought this last year, and I wanted to read it right away, but of course I didn't. And you know, I've been hearing some mixed reviews about this book, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to enjoy it. It sounds like a hoot. And I also love vampire stories, and sort of like the premise of this story. It's I don't know if it's set in the 80s or the 90s, or if it has that kind of vibe at all, but it's about like a higher class society, a women's club, a book club, I believe. Yeah, yep. And a vampire moves into their community, and it's up to them, I guess, to slay this vampire. I don't know. It sounds kind of funny and dark, and like I said, I love vampire stories, so let's bring it on. All right, this was from my Nightworms package that I got for November, I believe it was, and this is Wormwood by Chad Lutzke and Tim Mayer. I'm a big fan of Chad Lutzke's, and I can't wait to read what he's done in here with Tim Mayer. The cover art for this was like a limited edition, and it's signed by both authors. But that artwork is just disturbing for many reasons. But I'm hoping it's not quite as disturbing as the title suggests, but I guess we'll see. Looking forward to that. These books I hauled recently. I'm looking forward to reading A Lush and Seething Hell by John Horner Jacobs. As you can tell, I'm pretty bad with names. And as I said in my haul video, this is a collection of 2 novellas, and they are The Sea Dreams, It Is the Sky, and My Heart Struck Sorrow. And altogether, both stories make up about 360 pages or so. So I'm looking forward to that. A Cosmology of Monsters by Sean Hamill. I hauled this recently, and like I said in that video, it's probably one of the last hauls in a while because of my goal of not buying any more physical books, aside from a few rules. And so I'm looking forward to reading this because, well, both these books are cosmic horror, and as I said, that's my jam. I absolutely love weird fiction and cosmic horror, but, you know, I've been reading a lot of fantasy and other things lately because it's just what I'm in the mood for, so I want to keep the weird going as well, and I heard this is a good one. And for gothic horror, gothic ghost story, I don't know how far into horror this story goes, but I bought it just because of the synopsis. It sounds rather beautiful. It's gothic. It's gothic at least. I don't know if it's gothic horror. We'll find out. But I put it in with the horror because just by the description, it sounds like it could be horror. And that's The Lost Ones by Anita Frank. And the cover art for this is just beautiful. It's hard to show it without any glare, but I love it. I'm going to read you the first paragraph here of the synopsis. Reeling from the death of her fiancé, Stella Marcham welcomes the opportunity to stay with her pregnant sister Madeline at her imposing country mansion Grayswick. But she arrives to discover a house of unease and her sisters gripped by fear and suspicion. Before long, strange incidents begin to trouble Stella. Sobbing in the night, little footsteps on the stairs, and as events escalate, she finds herself drawn to the tragic history of the house. Aided by a wounded war veteran, Stella sets about uncovering Grayswick's dark and terrible secrets. Secrets the dead whisper from the other side. So it sounds like there's ghosts in this. I ended up reading the whole synopsis. But yeah, it sounds like there's ghosts in this. Maybe a bit of a haunted house gothic horror story. Alright, need to wet the palate. So, science fiction, and there's 2 science fiction here. I'm going to bookend this pile with science fiction, and then the rest is fantasy within this next part. So, well, this pile is science fiction and fantasy, so of course. But the first book here, Rachel from Shades of Orange has talked about a lot, and I bought it about a year and a half ago, and I keep meaning to read it, and I just never seem to get around to it for whatever reason. And that's The Wrong Stars by Tim Pratt. And this this is a series. I don't plan on reading the whole series this year unless this book really grips me. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy this book. It's, from my understanding, it's sort of like a found family in space type story. I don't know exactly what they do. I like going into books blind, and that's what I know. Sort of reminds me of the Becky Chambers books, and I really enjoyed the one book of hers I read, A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. And so I'm up for more of that. Sure, why not? Tim Pratt, The Wrong Stars. Let's do it. As I've been talking about a lot, I've been wanting to read this series for a while. I read the first two books, and I'm hoping I have sort of two goals: a hard goal and an easy goal. If I can't make the hard goal, then I'm gonna go for the easy goal, and that's to read. The easy goal is to read half this series by the end of 2021. But I would like to finish the entire series, the 10 books, not of course all the side books as well. So this is Gardens of the Moon. This is the first book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And I'm already actually started this one. I'm about close to 200 pages in, and yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. Actually, as a side note here, I'm really enjoying it the second time around, and I don't find it as difficult reading this the second time, which is kind of strange because I hear a lot of people say that, and you know it's true. I did not finish this book when I first started it. And this is The Way of Kings. It's because I was completely unprepared. I went through a period where I wasn't reading any fantasy. I used to read fantasy all the time, but I stopped, and the reason being was I was tired all the time. I just had a kid, and that was life changing, and so suddenly these 1,000-page tomes seemed very scary, and I just didn't want to tackle them. I didn't have like the brain energy, the focus, but I'm out of that little slump now, and so. This was the first book that I tried to read coming out of that slump, and that was a mistake. I was about halfway through this book, and it seemed like there were still endless hundreds of pages to go, and there was other stuff I wanted to get to, so I just pretty much put it down. But I'm reading this with Brad Proctor this year, starting January, and I'm looking forward to it. These two books I didn't get with my previous book haul. I bought them the time I went to the bookstore before that. I was going to include these in with that book haul, but I totally forgot. And the first one here is Jade City, and this is by Fonda Lee. Now this sounds like a lot of fun. This book, oh my god, it sounds like one of those old kung fu movies, and you have mob bosses. It takes place, from my understanding, in like a fictional China. And let's do it. That sounds like fun to me. I've heard a lot about this book. Jade refers to a type of drug that is being sold in this story, and I can't say much more about it other than the fact that I want to get to this as soon as possible because I'm kind of in the mood for it. This one I have talked about, but I didn't include it in any haul books or videos, and that is The Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. I always screw up her last name. I apologize for that. But this is basically Native American fantasy stories set in pre-Columbian times. At least it's like a fantasy world set in pre-Columbian times. I'm not too sure, but I heard it's very action-packed. There's a lot of feedback on this book so far. And I think it's because the writer, she's done some other fantasy books. Not epic fantasy like this, more like urban fantasy. I haven't read anything by her yet, but I'm looking forward to getting into this because of the Native American aspect of it. I've been wanting to read more Native American fiction, and this I went looking specifically for some Native American or epic fantasy or high fantasy written by Native American writers. I couldn't find anything. And then this book came out, and it was just like, wow, great timing. And so I saw it at the bookstore, and I bought it. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to reading this. And as I was trying to say earlier, there's kind of mixed reviews on this, because it's not very strong in the world building aspects, and fantasy lovers, they love their world building. But it's also heavy on the action, and you know what? I'm up for that. So it's also not as thick. This book here is about 430 pages, maybe a bit longer, 440, maybe 450. That's, I guess, fairly thick. When it goes to paperback, it'll probably be about 500-600 pages. So that's not so bad. But yeah, it's a little bit thinner than some other books. But this is book one of a series. I don't know when book two is coming out, so I will not be finishing this series. But I will be catching up. So I guess that was 3 books. So next book here is another book that Rachel from Shades of Orange talked about. At least I'm pretty sure she did. Might be wrong on that. Let me know, Rachel, if you're watching, if it was you or not. But this is Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon-Ha Lee. This is a fantasy story. He's known, I think, more for his science fiction story or series that came before this. That one seemed, because I'm doing Malazan, Book of the Fallen, I didn't really want to be doing 2 very difficult, narratively anyway, books or series at the same time. So I picked this up because I'm more of a fantasy food anyway, so why not, right? Did I say fantasy food? Anyways, so all I know about this book is about 2 artists who somehow get caught up in some sort of political scheming that might deal with war, I'm not sure, and there's dragons, and it sounds like a lot of fun. And for the science fiction bookend here, I've been meaning to read this for entirely too long now. I've heard pretty much nothing but good things about Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. I've been meaning to read this for a long time, and the title story, Stories of Your Life, that was the basis of, or it was adapted into the movie Arrival, and I absolutely love that film. I've watched it 2 or 3 times, and, you know, I get a little weepy-eyed at the end every time. I don't know. Alright, we're getting there. Moving on to the contemporary, I have 2 books here. One's a classic, and one is bound to become a classic. The first one is Medicine Walk by Richard Wegamise. This is a Richard Wegamise is a Canadian, or was a Canadian, native writer, fiction writer, and I read his book Indian Horse this year, and I loved it. It was pretty dark and pretty grim, but it was also fascinating, and you know, a fascinating look into the life of Canadian native indigenous life. And this story sounds like it's very heartbreaking. It's about it's a father and son story, and the father didn't really involve himself in his son's life very much because he has a serious drinking problem, and his drinking problem has caught up to him. It's killing him. He's gotten very sick from it, and he's dying. And so he asks his son to go up into a mountain to a very sacred land of their tribe. I'm not too sure what tribe they are from, but he asks him to take him up there as like a final farewell. And that just sounds as depressing as all hell. But I'm up for that. I since becoming a father, I've been wanting to read more father-son stories, and although this one's pretty grim, I'm up for it. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Been wanting to read more Brontes because I read Jane Eyre a few years ago and I absolutely loved it. I've been wanting to continue reading more Bronte sisters fiction, and Wuthering Heights, this book is kind of funny because there's people are on the fence about this book like there's no tomorrow. Either people hate this book or they love it, and I think it comes down to the characters, honestly. The characters are not likable in this book, and yet you have some people who think that this book is a romance book, and the people who I guess get this book argue that that there's no way in hell this is a romance book. It's quite the opposite. It's more of a revenge tale. So I'm looking forward to checking this out and seeing exactly what is going on in here. And I really love the print in this book. It's just marvelous. The final category here is mystery and thriller. We're going to start off with the thriller. And I've been meaning to read this book since I read, what book was it? of hers that I read. Sharp Objects. So since I read Sharp Objects, I've been wanting to read Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. I bought this used, found it at a used bookstore and picked it up, and I've been meaning to read it since, but I just never got to it. Now, this book, you find this book, a lot of horror fans talk about this book and the author's work as a whole, because she writes very dark fiction that could cross into horror if you're of the mind to say it's a little bit horror. I don't think like thriller fans would say, "Oh, that's horror" or horrific, but horror fans tend to be attracted to this author's work, and I want to read more. And so I think Dark Places is a good place to start, because apparently, and I'm not entirely sure, but I think it has like Satan worshipping cult in it. Yes, please, let's do that. 2 more books here, and these 2 books are from Booktubers. The first one here is An Heir to Murder by Charles Heathcote. And this is his first mystery book, and I believe it's the first of a series, but I'm not entirely sure about that. I bought this book straight from the author after reading his story, Our Doris, or his novel, Our Doris, this year. And I've been wanting to read more since, and so I ended up getting his entire backlog of books, and this is one of them. I plan on reading more Our Doris as well, but I thought I'd put this one in this list because, well, it's mystery, and it sounds like it's a lot of fun. From the people who have reviewed this book and talked about it, I haven't heard anything negative about it, and judging by Charles Heathcote's style of writing, it's bound to be a bit of a cracker, a bit of funny in it, and I like that. And finally, but certainly, definitely not the last of this year, is The Tower Hill Terror by Dane Cobain. This is the Leapfold Mysteries, book number 2. I read Driven last year, and I still remember it quite clearly. And that's rare for me. I usually forget books very easily, but I don't remember what happened in the first book. So I'm looking forward to reading this one, seeing where Dane takes his 2 characters, his 2 PIs, so to speak, and what happens to them. What mysteries will they find in this book? And I believe he's working on book 3 right now, so that is something else to look forward to. I need to catch up, and this book will catch me up. So I guess that was 4 series that I need to catch up on. And so there we go. There's my 21 books that I plan on reading in 2021. If you have a video similar to this, 21 books you want to read in 2021, let me know in the comments. You don't need to link it. Just tell me you have one, and I'll go and check it out. So thank you for watching. If you made it this far, I absolutely adore you. So keep being safe and keep being creative, and I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.